morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the She-Myth Eliminator story. And today I am joined by the beautiful Nilu Kamiss, who's coming at us all the way from Edmonton, Canada. So I'm pretty excited. You know, a girl from the Gold Coast talking with a girl from Edmonton, Canada. A pretty cool story to be able to jump on the internet and be able to connect with people from all over the world. So today we're going to take a slightly different, a bit of a detour to our normal kind of regime of the She-Myth Eliminator story. And what I've asked Nilu to talk about, we're going to talk a lot about courage today. So Nilu is a very experienced social media and content manager, and she teaches people how to find their voice and how to actually step into their power. So I thought, why not go down that path? Why not have a bit of a chat about that and talk about, you know, this whole sort of subject of courage, because inside of the She-Myth book, we do talk a lot about finding the courage to do the things that you want to do. And I know that this is a subject that Nilu has had many conversations about on her own pages. And so I thought, let's open up today's conversation with that particular topic around, we as women, how do we find our courage to stand up, stand firm, and then stand out in this world of business? So welcome to the show today, Nilu. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. I'm excited to be here. And you know, when I think of the word courage and where that courage comes from for women specifically, I think it instantly takes me back to childbirth. So what a great place to kind of, because I think a lot of women, most women can relate to that. And even if you haven't had a child of your own, if you haven't birthed a child of your own, some of us may have adopted, and you know, even just raising the child, that in itself is this, you need to have that courage, right? Some days it's not so easy. Some days they're amazing. But for me, I always kind of go back to that experience of when I was pregnant, not just with my first child. I have 3 kids. Every single pregnancy, that lead up to that delivery, that labor part, is extremely scary, right? And it's like, what can you expect? What can you go wrong? You think of all of these things, but when it comes down to, you know, getting in there and getting it done, when it comes down to, you know, that moment of meeting your baby for the first time, you figure out, you find the courage from within you, right? It's not something we don't really have a choice in the matter when you're in the thick of it. And for me, I think when I have to talk to somebody about the courage, I think it's something that we get from the inside. And, you know, when I talk to a lot of people about, you know, getting up on stage and getting in front of the camera, and, you know, a lot of people have that anxiety about, okay, how do I go up and share myself? How do I get vulnerable? It's not easy, right? And so courage is something that we come across, and we have to kind of dig in and bring out every single day. And so that's really what I tell people. Like, it's not something that's on the outside. It's not something that we can like go collecting and write notes about on how to conjure up, right?
Yeah.
It's something that really comes from deep within you. And it's amazing how powerful that when we put our minds to it, and when we're determined on achieving something, based on how important that is for us, I think that courage just flows, and you just have to let that flow.
Absolutely.
Right?
But if you think back, have you always been someone that's, because I think about me, you know, yes, and no, that was a great analogy. You don't have a choice, right? You're going to have a baby. It's coming. It's not like you can put it back in there and keep it, put a plug in it, and it ain't going to happen. You know, so if you don't find the courage to make that happen, well, you're going to be in a world of hurt, a world of trouble. So, you know, that's a great analogy. But you're almost forced to have that level of courage when you're placed in a situation like that. if we think back to even prior to say something like childbirth, where now in our older, when we're a little bit older, we're a little bit wiser, and we've got messages and things that we want to talk about with people, but often, like you say, it's like that courage comes from within. Like if you think back years ago, were there a time where like you were frightened to put yourself out there? You were frightened to actually talk about things? Like tell me a bit about that, because some of our viewers might actually still be in that phase of like they know they've got something to talk about. They know they want to do different things with their life, but they want to, change their relationships or change their job or whatever the case may be. They want to do it, but they just haven't yet got to the point where they've found the courage from within to actually help them do it. So, can you think of a situation where that has been the case, and what did you actually do to then start kind of turning inwards and find that courage to be able to do what you're doing now?
Absolutely. So I want to go back a little bit before I come to the answer for that question. But for me, that experience of being held back because of the lack of the courage, or rather not recognizing that I had it within me all along. And for me, that came from my upbringing. Like I was born and raised in Sri Lanka, and we have lots of tradition and lots of cultural nuances that we're expected to sort of follow, right? And so growing up, I always found myself sort of not being able to relate to a lot of people because I felt like I was so different, right? I felt like, like if I voiced some of the things that were in my head, I would really be like looked down at, right? So
Mhm.
I remember not really having a lot of friends. I remember having not very many conversations that I would go really deep into, right? And so when I came to this position, and now I'm coming to the future, when I actually started getting into business and started talking to people, it took me a long time to actually become comfortable with telling people that I was in business, that I was, staying at home and choosing to be a mom as well as run my own business, because it wasn't traditionally, it's not seen as a, something that's one thing stable, right?
Mhm.
This was, of course, about 12 years ago. And in my community, there was a lot of people who looked down at it. It's like, oh, you're staying home and you're not supporting your husband by going to work and bringing in the income. Like, there was a lot of that kind of talk. And it was really hard because obviously it wasn't easy, right? Financially, it was a strain. But we thought, okay, well, we're alone in this country. We don't have family here. We want to be able to be there for the kids. So I decided to stay home. But of course, I had this crazy entrepreneurial spirit that I'm never not doing anything. I'm always trying to do something on the side. And as I was kind of going through that journey and learning, I realized that, it's not about keeping my story inside. And it was scary at first. It was very scary at first. And even now, there are parts of me that, try to, that I haven't completely opened up, if I was to be 100% honest, right? Because we always wonder, especially when we're on this public stage of like, even if it's in a closed community, there are parts of us that we're not so confident to go out and say, hey, this is 100% me, right? And it is a journey in itself. It's not something where you just like take the veil off and decide to get scrutinized, right? It takes time, and it does take some sort of a practice. I would say that would be the biggest thing, getting into a practice of getting comfortable. If you do it as a practice every single day, every week, then after a while, you learn to do it without holding yourself back. You slowly start shedding those fears. But if I had to use one word to kind of define it, it would be clarity. Like if you
Yeah.
get clear on what you want out of it, what the purpose of it was, it becomes a lot more easier to take those steps, even if they're tiny. And I always encourage my clients, like, don't commit to huge steps, because you're gonna freeze when
Mhm.
it's time to take that step. Take tiny steps. But
I love
if you're
that.
not clear, right? It's harder
Yeah.
to do because there's so many moving pieces, right?
Absolutely. And taking those tiny steps and showing up and doing it over and over and over again and practicing, like, the analogy, practice makes perfect. Well, practice builds your confidence.
Yeah.
Practicing and showing up and doing it every single day, whatever it is that you want to do, that will formulate that habit, and that habit then formulates, the competency, and the competency then starts to grow the courage. So there was, along the way too, what were some of the things that you did? Because obviously, in your with your Sri Lankan background, and the things that you were talking about as far as like not being the normal Sri Lankan wife, and doing some of the things that are really outside of the box, that would be considered, I'm going to say, quite normal in the Western, like in the
Mhm.
Western world, but certainly not for your culture. What did you do? How did you continue to support you, not from a financial point of view, but from an emotional and an energetic point of view, to ensure that you were able to do all of these things? What sort of things did you do to get that level of support so you could
Mhm.
continue?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was for me to find the right people to connect with, because that really helped me position myself and give me the support that I needed to slowly start peeling those layers in that onion,
Yeah.
right? Because I find that, you know, and that's probably just my personality too. Like, I love connecting with people and talking to people, and like talking and sort of discovering new things about people, and so when I first started on like going into business, I actually went in um, as a rep in an MLM company. That was my sort of introduction into the business world. And to me, what really captured me was the sense of community, right? Was a sense of sisterhood, and that helped me sort of, you know, give me that momentum that I needed to get myself out there and to start talking to more people. And obviously I'm not doing that anymore. But, along my journey, that's always been the place that I kind of fell back in towards, because I felt like if I had the right people around me, the right tribe that supported me, there's a lot that I could do. Not just when I was succeeding, but also when I was feeling down, because we all go through that, sort of a roller coaster ride in life. And some days are not, you need more support than others, right? But yeah, I would say that was the big thing. But I do have to say, when I was going through that journey, at first, I sort of cut myself off of my my local community, right? So I've always been uh an online gal. Let's put it that way. I've always gone in and searched for connections online. And but that did I did sort of sever ties completely from the people that I felt would judge me, would, scrutinize the way I did things. So until I was confident that I could stand up on my own 2 feet and say, hey, this is where I am, this is where I've worked myself up to, I kept those doors shut,
Hmm.
right? And then, but in the sidelines, I was still building a sense of community with other people that I could relate to and that understood what I was doing.
Yeah, I think a big part of the journey and the process to all of this is finding those people that you really, you vibe with, that are on the same wavelength as you, so that you can support one another. I've got a question here. In terms of like the things that you've done, because obviously over the years, and you mentioned that it's kind of like peeling back the layers of an onion, right? It's like, over time you get more and more courage, and you allow more and more of yourself to be shown as as your confidence increases and as you find more courage. Can you think of a time where you actually had to push through and be really vulnerable on something that, now you look back and maybe, you felt at the time, gosh, that was like really hard. I was really fearful of doing that, but actually it wasn't all that bad. Can you think
Yeah.
of a situation?
I probably have to, I mean, I've got probably lots of instances that I could go back to, but I'm gonna pick one that probably relates to a lot of you because you are in this community and you're online. I think that was the one moment was when the first time I actually did a Facebook Live, or leading up to that.
Uh-huh.
It was really nerve-wracking. Like it was so tough for me to put myself out there. And the thing, like going back to what we talked about before, the thing that pushed me to kind of move through that was the clarity. And that clarity came from, I have something that I can share that there's somebody out there that is needing to hear.
Yes.
And that was the thing that pushed me over that hump of, saying, you're not good enough, you can't do this, English is not your first language, nobody's going to want to hear what you want to say. All of those talk that we play like a record in our head. I was able to sort of move through those because I believed in what I was trying to put out there. And that's where I was saying, like, clarity is so important. If you can get really clear on that vision of what you're wanting to do, what you're wanting to accomplish, then the courage, the strength that is inside of you will flow through if you let it, right?
Well, I think this is a really good opportunity for me to say, guys, a lot of what Nilu's actually talking about in terms of like finding like who you are, what you're about, what your inner genius is, finding the courage, like getting that clarity, a lot of that is actually covered inside of the She-Myth book. Like we talk about all the things that Nilu's just said in terms of like the story, the negative stories that we conjure up in our own minds, that we play over and over and over again, that end up not serving us in any way, shape, or form. In fact, they're actually detrimental. And so it's learning how to rewrite those stories, then find the courage from within, then being able to, assign what are my inner genius skills that I really want to shine now and allow to shine, and then what way am I going to allow that to happen? What form or shape will that take? When you read the She-Myth book, in here, it actually covers off those things. So we're going to talks through like what are some of the She-Myths that you need to understand so that you can start to rewrite those, rewrite those unhealthy stories that we've been writing for ourselves. And then it goes on to you discover the 3-step process that Vicky and I talk about in the book that actually helps you to move through that process and overcome a lot of the challenges that you've been facing, then gives you some business discernment, and it enables you to also find that creativity that's inside of you and give you a process to be able to transform where you are now into the wonderful woman that you are transforming into, that allows you to have the courage, and the confidence to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do in life. So I'm glad that we went down this path, because the things that Nilu's talking about today are so important. She spoke really clearly about, understanding who it is that she is, getting real clear on why she needs to do things. And when you can understand and have clarity about why you're doing things, then all of a sudden you're able to knock over all of those dominoes that have been standing in your way, that have been all the things that you've been putting in front of you to say, you can't do this, because they don't exist anymore. So I want to congratulate Nilu on what she's on the transformation and the journey that she's been on to get to the point that she's at today, where she feels really comfortable and confident to actually get out there and speak her truth, be vulnerable at times. And of course, this is always a journey of like self discovery, right? We're never ever at the destination. You're continually discovering new things about yourself, discovering how to how to navigate through this journey of life and journey of business. And as long as as long as you are aware, you are self-aware, and that you have the support around you, you are then equipped to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do in your wildest dreams in your life.
Yes, very true.
Yeah. So today, Nilu, is there something that you would like to share, like a message or a piece of advice that you would like to share with other women who are watching today?
Yeah, I'd like to say, you know, every one of us, we all have something very special in us. I think you would agree with that, Tracy. We are all very unique. We all have a combination of talents and skills that makes us the special me, the special you. And sometimes that's scary because we feel like, oh, nobody will understand me. Nobody will get me because I'm different. But it is that uniqueness that also makes you special, right? So, if there's something that you really want to do that is burning, but you're too afraid, I just want to go back to what we've just been talking about. That clarity is really important because when you are clear, when you have an idea of, what it is that you're after, whether it's, being an amazing mom or being the best CEO or being the best friend or the best spouse, um, we need to understand what that is first because we can't get to a place where we're not sure how we're getting there or where we're going, right? But clarity is the one thing I would say that you should spend your time on at this moment if you're not sure of how to get the courage to go there. And I also want to say, you know, um, the world is an amazing place. Yeah, even though sometimes we do feel like there's a lot of negative things happening, there's also lots of great things happening. So keep focusing on the good, and I think your courage will come through, will shine through.
I couldn't agree with you more. And now is the time, right? Now is like I'm a firm believer. Like you asked, do I believe in this? Absolutely, I do. I think everybody has got an amazing message inside of them that is worthy of sharing. Somebody asked me this question yesterday. Do you think I've got a message that's worthy sharing? You're asking the wrong person that question because my answer will be, I think everybody has a message that is worth sharing. It's just like say finding the clarity of what specifically is that message that you want to share. And when you get clarity around that and you're able to articulate it and you can be clear with, where it is that you're going, then it enables you to be very clear with your messaging, outwards. And clearly the message that I want to give here today with the She-Myth Eliminator stories is that all of you are worthy. Now is the time for women to step forward, to stand up, and to stand firm on what it is that you believe in, whatever that may be. Now is your time. So I want to end today and just say, hey guys, if you haven't purchased a copy of the She-Myth book, you can get it in paperback copy, just like this one here, or you can buy the ebook version. The place that you need to go is to amazon.com or amazon.com.au and go and purchase it there. You can get it for as little as 99 cents if you want to read the book, implement the things that Vicky and I talk about in the book. A lot of what's been spoken about in the She-Myth Eliminator story, like I constantly say this, but there are patterns, and I want you guys to be watching out for those patterns because every woman that's been here, even though our stories are very different, even though the journey might have been different, there is actually a common thread through all of these things. And there's also the common thread of how they've moved forward and getting to the point where they're really happy, they have joy in their life, and they're doing all the things that they want to do. So just keep, really listen carefully for those and start listening and watching for the cues because they are all there. They're all hidden within every single message that every woman is bringing to the table. So I want to say thank you so much, Nilu, for being here today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I'm sure that we're going to have continued chats from here on in. And I want to say to everybody else, thank you so much for joining me on the She Myth Eliminator story. I hope you are enjoying these stories from other amazing women. You are also an amazing woman. If you have not yet had an opportunity to be on this platform with me, sharing your story, I don't know what you're waiting for. It's not that scary. I promise you, I'm not that scary. We'll get on here and have a really nice conversation. And it just may be the catalyst to give you the strength and the courage to be able to continue to use your voice to do good in the world. So I'm going to leave it at that today. Say thank you very much. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye for now.
Thanks for having me, Karen.
Thank you.